Director of Research at Sheridan College. We have Jeff McIsaac, former Dean Applied Research at Mohawk College. We have Rick Burdenuk, Partner, Government Incentives and SHRED at BDO Canada. And we have Dr. Darren Lawless, VP of R&D at McMaster University. So now I'm going to pass it over to our moderator, Cheryl.
Well, good morning. Welcome to the Unlocking Innovation Dollars discussion. I'm sitting here today reflecting on the hockey game last night. And what game, you might ask? Just let me say my world as part of Leafs Nation is very, very happy today. And yes, innovation is desired in sports, new technologies for equipment, skill development, audience engagement, and sponsorship. And we see those in the media every single day. Yet in academic institutions and industry organizations, the innovation and excellence in partnerships may not be as obvious to everyone, but we know it's the true foundation of our country. In this panel discussion, we'll learn how to elevate the innovation game by tapping into the rich resources and expertise of academia, to discover the strategies and harness college and university research, access skilled research talent, leverage high-end resources to accelerate the innovation journey while reducing costs and time to market. So I think let's set some goals for this session. So discover some top tips for effective industry academic partnerships. Learn how businesses could gain access to other academic resources like physical equipment, lab, and computing resources. Make note of who is speaking and who is attending, and reach out to establish long-term relationships and uncover opportunities for collaboration with industry experts and academic institutions. I am Sherryl Petricevic, Director of Strategic Alliances and Partnerships at Profound Impact. Over the last 30 years, I've taken on leadership roles from small nonprofit organizations to large multinational companies, and key member at teams at Communitech, the Ontario Business Education Partnership, TrustPoint Innovation Technologies, Waterloo EDC, etc. And I'm currently working on my second startup at Profound Impact. Profound Impact is a female-led, SaaS-based company bringing AI-powered platform called Research Impact to market. The Research Impact platform lives at the intersection of academic institutions, industry, researchers, and funding agencies to find the perfect funding match. With over $300 billion in research funding opportunities, thousands of potential industry partners, and 8.8 million researchers globally, finding the perfect match for grant, academic, and industry innovators is often overwhelming and unnecessarily time-consuming. Research Impact is more than a search engine. It automates the process of finding grants and industry partners and provides timely and targeted grant matches to participants, saving administrative time, increasing funding knowledge and opportunity, and accelerating research opportunities. So fun fact, at the end of this discussion, if you want to learn more about Research Impact, you can participate in a live demonstration. The link will be made available in the chat. And now, it's my honor to introduce the panel participants to you. Dr. Vicki Mowat is the Director of Research at Sheridan College, where she and her team support the growth of research, innovation, and entrepreneurship activities across the college and with industry and community partners across Halton and Peel. As noted in her biography, Dr. Mowat joined Sheridan in early 2019. Ooh, that's a time. And since then, that time has almost doubled the amount of research funds in the college and has been instrumental in expanding interdisciplinary research collaborations, not only with SMEs, but importantly with nonprofit and community-based organizations in Oakville, Mississauga, and Brampton. Rick, here we go, Burdenuk is BDO partner dedicated to helping companies fund their innovation and growth. He leads a team that helps over 300 companies access tax credits, government incentives, and capital planning. He spent 7 years in the tech startups focused on distributed computation, image recognition, and web-based interfaces as a software developer and progressing into IT management and finance. Rick has participated in policy development, contributed to draft legislation, and when necessary, worked in dispute resolution, tax court, and governmental relations. Darren Lawless is the Associate Vice President, Research Innovation Partnership at McMaster University, and possibly a Toronto Maple Leafs fan. Darren is passionate about solving problems that result in real outcomes, which he guesses makes him an outlier in the university world. He is also super interested in different partnership models, as he doesn't think one size fits all. Darren received his PhD in inorganic photochemistry from Concordia University in Montreal and subsequently completed a postdoctoral appointment at Argonne National Laboratories near Chicago, Illinois. And last but not least, Jeffrey McIsaac. Mr. McIsaac is the Dean of Engineering, Technology, and Aviation at Mohawk College in Hamilton, and formerly served as Mohawk's Dean of Applied Research. He has led partnerships with nearly 100 businesses from the region in areas including advanced manufacturing, digital health, IoT, cybersecurity, sustainability, and renewable energy. Whew. A passionate entrepreneur, he has founded and led 4 startups in the advanced manufacturing space and has advised businesses of all size nationwide on innovation commercialization. He holds a master's degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Waterloo. So welcome everyone to the discussion. The process for the session today is I'll ask each of the panelists a few questions to get the conversation started. Audience, if you have questions, as Hannah said, please post them in the chat and we'll include them as time permits. We have a bit of time, so let's get started. We're going to start with you, Dr. Mowat. In your current role as Director of Research at Sheridan College, tell us about Generator, the Sheridan incubator, and the role Sheridan Research plays in helping industry to collaborate with your academic researchers. What are typical project durations and team sizes?
Great, thank you so much, Cheryl. And first of all, I'd just like to start by thanking Innovation Factory for hosting this session. I think it's a fabulous opportunity, and it speaks to some of the future questions that we're actually going to be talking about how do we bring academia and industry partners together better. And you know, hello to my fellow panelists. It's always a pleasure to be with these guys. I'm thrilled to talk about Generator at Sheridan. Generator actually is our new sub-brand at the college that reflects the diversity and the breadth of research, innovation, and entrepreneurship activities that we undertake across the whole college. So just for our audience, just to sort of set the stage, as a college, our research activities are very, very applied in nature, meaning we don't do research for our own benefit. We do our research activities in direct response to the needs of our industry and our community partners. So we're really dependent on folks bringing their wicked problems to us. For the past 3 years running, we've been recognized as the top college in the Research College rankings nationally for industry partnerships. So this is sort of reflective of how seriously we take that relationship building with our communities. We support our partners in a few different ways. So not only do we have 5 diverse research and entrepreneurship centers focused on intelligent manufacturing, mobile computing, screen industries, healthy aging, and supports for entrepreneurs and change makers. We also engage well over 100 faculty members every year with very distinct, specific expertise in areas to meet the needs of our industry and community folks. So this just helps ensure that our partners are able to access a wide variety of interdisciplinary expertise as well as technology and supports. As a college, as a post-secondary institution, we have access to a great deal of different federal, provincial, and municipal funding that support R&D. And those are really key to supporting the activities for our community partners. And finally, we provide access to our students, who are a huge piece of the research, innovation, entrepreneurship picture. Again, we're one of the top colleges in terms of the number of students that we employ, we engage in research activities on an annual basis. It's an excellent learning for them. But for our partners, they also really appreciate the opportunity to work with this new talent and have access then to that pipeline of highly skilled future workers. In terms of project duration and team size, Cheryl, that really depends. It's very diverse. It depends on the methodology, depends on the research question at hand, but it's also driven a lot by the funding length. A wide variety of funding options out there. So, for example, we have projects that take 3, 4, 5 weeks at our Screen Industries Research and Training Centers, to projects that last 3 years long, if it's a college and community social innovation grant, for example. and everything in between. So it really is very dependent. That's part of the role of my team, is helping find the right funding for the right research question. And then teams, again, similarly, they always include the external partner. We always include at least 1 to 2 faculty or research staff members and at least 1 to 3 students. So again, quite variable, quite diverse based on the needs.
Wow. That's so I can see why you were able to double the industry research coming in. That sounds like a really strong program. We're going to flip over to Dr. Lawless. McMaster has over 60 specialized research centers and institutions with a strong focus in the healthcare fields, including medicine, immunology, and surgery, as well as manufacturing, materials, and device technology. One of the premier centers is the McMaster Manufacturing Research Institute, MMRI, that develops intelligent solutions for Canada's manufacturing across machining processes. Can you share more about the MMRI and some recent projects?
Several years of learning that I have to go off mute. So thank you very much, Cheryl, and thank you for inviting me to the panel. It's absolutely an honor to be here. And it's great to see Vicky and all the great work that's being done at Sheridan and Mohawk, having spent a number of years in the college system. It's wonderful. It's also very interesting. When I joined the university system, I had this perception that we do fundamental research and that's all we do. But the reality is it's an ecosystem. And we do everything from the fundamental processes all the way to the applied. I like to tease with engineers, how do you drive an engineer crazy? Ask them if they do anything applied, and they go, all engineering is applied. So we work hard. We have over 60 centers, and one of our premier centers is Materials Manufacturing Research Institute, led by Dr. Stephen Veldhuis, who does amazing work and whose passion is to help Ontario companies and Canadian companies grow and develop so that we have a manufacturing base in Ontario. And we do that by engaging our students and our companies in trying to understand what's preventing them from growing or what the issues are. And MMRI has had a number of successes, and I could fill up the whole hour just going through it, but there's 2 specific. So we recently heard that Honda Canada is going to be making a massive investment in Canada, which is really great to see. That'll drive jobs and in the automotive sector here. MMRI has been working with Honda Canada for a large number of years, having done over 90 projects with them since 2014. And by projects, you look at Honda is very interested, obviously, in the processes and the tooling. And so why does the tool break down? What are the factors? And if you understand those factors, then perhaps you can take steps to prevent the tool from breaking down, because every time a tool breaks down, it's a loss of money. If you have to shut down a production line or you have to have a delay, then you're decreasing your productivity. So MMRI has worked extensively with Honda. That's one of our things. We'll work, we at McMaster and in the university, you could do 2 things. You could push out, hey, I've got this great idea, talk to an industry and see if the industry is interested in it. Or you could do what Vicky and Jeff do and invite companies, say, well, what's stopping you? What are your things? What are your biggest challenges? And in Honda, it's processes and it's tooling. And so we're fortunate enough to have the expertise to mimic what happens on a production line. So that's one great example. Another example of what MMRI is, sometimes a student will have a great idea. So you look at, and I'll bring you an example, an imaginable solution. So if you have cerebral palsy or you have trouble moving, it's really frustrating because there's nothing wrong and you just don't have control. So one of our students was able to come up with an idea how to create a 3D printed device that would assist people who have mobility issues so that they could either touch a screen or write or function and launch the company. So Guided Hands was really designed by people with limited hand mobility by one of our students, and it applies to people with stuff like Huntington's disease, or as I get older, arthritis, and it becomes cramping. How do I do it? And so that's an example of how MMRI has worked with not only with industry, but also within the internal community to move ideas out into the marketplace.
Wow, a nice combination of the push and pull of ideas and innovation. Jeff, Mohawk has been active across a dozen industrial fields, including cybersecurity, remote sensing, additive manufacturing, and IoT through IdeaWorks, Mohawk's hub of applied research and innovation. Congratulations on IdeaWorks being ranked again this year as a top 3 college by Research InfoSource for research in Ontario. Tell us about IdeaWorks and what makes its high ranking so special.
Yeah, thanks, Cheryl, and I want to echo Darren and Vicky's thanks for including me on the panel. IdeaWorks is our hub for applied research within Mohawk College. So it operates more or less as the organizing secretariat for all activities around applied research within the college, and becomes a first point of contact for our industrial partners. We're quite proud of the rankings that you touched on, the top 3 consistently in the top 3 across the country in number of paid student researchers, as well as number of industry partnerships that we complete, which are the 2 things that I've always believed to be the most important metrics. I have always focused on the idea of what can we do for our partners and what can we do for our students. And so seeing those numbers consistently ranking so highly is a great source of pride for us. Across IdeaWorks, we operate a number of different centers. You listed some of them, and much like what Vicky described, we have centers which are largely driven by professional researchers, but then complemented by our faculty experts as necessary. And then we bring our students in who round out our teams. So our teams consistently consist of 1 to 2 professional researchers supported by several students, looking at projects in duration, which can range from a couple of weeks on the very, very short end up to a couple of years in the larger end. And whatever the industry partner is needing to focus on to bring is something that we can support around, as you mentioned, industrial Internet of Things, sensing, advanced manufacturing, cybersecurity. So sustainability is a fast-growing area for us, and climate action is something that we want to focus on quite a bit with our partners, especially here in the Bay Area, where we want to see change in the heavy industry sector. And so we want to help to lead that as much as we can. Some of the funding tools that are available to us are also, I think, pretty interesting for our partners, and they will be similar to some of the things that Sheridan has to offer. We can sort of tap in the same programs. So there's a lot of great opportunity for us to partner with companies across the region, and we have, as I say, a great track record of doing that. Yeah, I was going to say more, but I'll leave it there for now. I'm sure we're going to get to more in a second. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, so it sounds there's a bit of a theme here that industry academic partnerships can go from weeks to years, and it really is dependent on the project and the partners, I guess. Speaking of partners, Rick, we've talked a lot about the academic side of the R&D equation, but your experience in working directly with technology and manufacturing companies across Ontario to support their innovation. You have seen hundreds of successful R&D projects over the years. What are your top tips for how you see industry working effectively with academia?
I've got a lot, and it's a little context specific, but I'll start with a story that the most, I'll say, rewarding engagements from industry, where they are bringing problems to academia, are those with great specificity and limited scope. And I'll give the example, maybe linking to something that Darren mentioned of, I'm an entrepreneur or a company and I've developed a product, but I've identified a failure and I need a material substitution. What I've got isn't right. The way I'm producing it isn't correct. And so defined terms with examples are the ones where academia has made tremendously valuable contributions, because for a company, everybody thinks their skills are transferable to another area of science, and they aren't. Cheryl, to break it to many of the inspired entrepreneurs out there, but the more specificity you can bring, the better ROI I've seen, and just joy at the engagement with academics when we've had clearly defined problems, and we need to find the experts to assist with those problems. That's my number one tip.
I would bet our academic friends agree to that. Great specificity and limited scope. That probably really helps move things along. Thank you. Vicky, back to you. Sheridan is leading the way in development of AI technology with its 5 research and entrepreneurship centers that bring industry and community partners together with Sheridan's faculty and students to develop solutions to their pressing issues. Can you share some of the success stories coming out of these AI projects? AI is where everything's at right now.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And AI is really a fundamental tool and technology and methodology that we use across all of our research and entrepreneurship centers, actually, to different degrees. I've got a few different examples that I'm really excited to share. The first is our Center for Applied AI, formerly known as the Center for Mobile Innovation. They've been working with a few external partners for a number of years now to develop ultimately what they call the clinic of the future. So this care company has been really exploring that area of wearable technology and easier, more accessible health data. And so CAI, and working with these companies and looking at the wearable technology, have developed different software platforms and mixed reality solutions to combine to support remote healthcare monitoring with real-time data. And so this enables a physician, a nurse practitioner, any other healthcare practitioner to really monitor a patient's heart rate, breathing, pulse, all of those vital signs more effectively, more efficiently, and thoroughly. So for example, if you think about someone presenting at a really busy hospital on a Saturday night in downtown Toronto, ER is packed, they are presenting with signs of or symptomatology of a heart attack, but it could be indigestion as well. So instead of facing a long, many hours wait in an ER on a hard chair, it could be put this wearable technology on, go back home, put your feet up, have a cup of tea, watch the hockey game, and they are monitored. All of their vitals are monitored remotely in real time at the hospital. And if there's anything that happens, the ambulance is dispatched. So that's one example that, again, that has been many years in the making and is growing. Another example is our Center for Intelligent Manufacturing. It used to be Advanced Manufacturing. And they've been working with a leading company that has been responsible for developing machine-ready auto parts. And so what they've been doing is having a human being at the other end doing the visual inspection of each of these parts. And of course, there's human error and deficits or problems with the part have been missed. So they worked with CIM to develop a proof of concept robotic imaging detection system paired with artificial intelligence algorithms to detect those problems and defects in those inspected parts. And in testing, it was a much more effective, superior error rate or miss rate, for lack of a better term, than human beings. And then finally, I just wanted to talk a little bit about a collaboration that our Center for Elder Research and our Screen Industries Research and Training Center have been undertaking, again, with some external partners for a couple of years. And they've really been testing the feasibility, acceptability, and performance of two technologies for remotely monitoring changes in cognitive health and mental health in those who are aging, particularly those who might be facing early Alzheimer's or dementia. So using CERT's expertise in developing virtual human characters, which are powered by AI, that the solution has been to develop AI-powered speech analysis algorithms with those virtual characters so that baseline data of an elderly person can be tracked, monitored, analyzed. And so when they engage with that virtual human, any discrepancies, any changes in that communication pattern can be flagged. So it just enhances continuity of care, early detection, early identification of declining cognitive impairment. So those are three.
Wow. You'd almost be defining those as like AI for good or something along that line, because it really, it's
Absolutely.
where AI is augmenting human, not taking place. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Darren, Before your move to academia, you were the former head of R&D at an industrial chemical company. Can you share what you found was the biggest hurdle to working with academia at the time? What do you see in practice now, and how is it different today at McMaster?
That's a really good question. I think there's one word. When I was in industry, it's awareness. I had no idea what the capabilities, and I'm no, take my lumps. I had no idea what colleges can do. I had no idea. I thought universities had this perception is they're working on the vaccines of tomorrow. They're working on something that'll be, and they weren't, to me, very inviting institutions to go to. So I didn't know how. And in a small company, remember, cash is king. So if you're not putting out product, you're not able to pay your staff, and staff gets really, really irritated if you can't pay them. I don't know why, but maybe we should do some research on that. But so awareness was one thing. I didn't know what was available. I didn't know who had what, and I didn't have time. So that was the biggest impediment. I didn't know what to do. And then I didn't know what the process was. How do you work effectively with a Sheridan, a Mohawk, or a McMaster? People forget how big our institutions are. I mean, I've heard, this could be urban myth, but I've heard people wandering around campus say, I want to talk with somebody. Well, at McMaster, we have 60 research centers, 1,500 or so research outside of health science, because that's a beast in itself, who actively practice research. So you have to have some entry point, and there was no entry point. It forced us to do, and when it was industry, we did a lot of our product development outside the country, very often with contacts that we had overseas in China and Ireland, because we knew we'd go there and we'd say, here's our idea, and we would get an answer. So I didn't know the capacity, I didn't know the process. IP was a huge thing, because obviously you don't want to give away your intellectual property. And if you look at the Canada landscape, even to this day, it's all over the place. We have an IP policy at MAC, which is fairly friendly, but it could be this, or this. You go to another university and they have different policies. Waterloo is inventor owned, and it's like, okay, like I don't have time. I remember going back to the first statement, if I don't get product out the door, I'm not able to pay my staff, and they get irritated, and pitchforks really hurt. And then it was timing. So how fast when you're in industry, and I've set up a research group, their task was to get something, and we had a deadline, because our customer would say, you know what, we need this product by, such and such a date. And that could be a month, it could be 2 months. And then you work with academics, and it's like, well, are you in the right cycle? So have you, if you're off cycle, maybe there aren't people. So the college system has done a great job, as have our research institutes, in having staff available to handle that. So that's been a big thing that's helped. And then the third thing I really wasn't too familiar with was the incredible support system that Canada has, whether it's through Tri-Council funding, through Alliance Engage grants, or OCI through some of the programs. And I knew OCI before it was OCE, and OCE when it was MMO. So I'm dating myself, but those were the three big awareness. So what's changed? Well, fortunately, many institutions, and my peers and colleagues on the panel will tell you as well, we've done a really good job of trying to get the word out. Are we perfect? No, people still don't know what our capability or how we work with it. But the use of social media to guide people, the use of active outreach, success stories, so that serving on panels, so that people are now more familiar. People forget that college research only started, applied research is very young, less 2000. Vicky, help me out here. 2013, Jeff, something like that. So it's a relatively young, but it's growing and it's accelerating. And the way universities are working, doing more with industry is accelerating. So keeping people on top means serving on panels and going. So I think the realization that being the best kept secret in the system is not effective. So we now have people going out, and we go to conferences and say, we can do this, we can work. And Jeff and I and Vicky will go out, and we'll advocate for what we can do. But again, the problem is 98% of Canadian companies are SMEs struggling to stay alive. They don't have time. They're like, how can you help me? How can you help tomorrow? So I think there's been new processes and new mechanisms. I know at MAC, we're looking like, how can we accelerate the process? Can it work? Yes. Are we still revising it? Absolutely. So conferences or being able to sit on a panel and say, there is help out there. There are people, whether it's myself, Jeff, Vicky, or others, you could go to, and we can run you through the process, which I think is a huge advantage that I didn't have many years ago.
Wow. I have to agree. I think awareness is the biggest thing. And I've done that walk through the colleges and universities going, where is everybody? How do I find the right person? So I agree. Like, getting the word out there is super important. I think that's some good tips, and we'll keep moving on those.
Yeah, I'll just add one other comment.
Sure.
I think it's also understanding how various parts of the ecosystem work. I mean, educational institutions are in business to educate students. So there are semesters. And so you're not like a Battelle where you could go and say, here's a huge check, I want this answer in 3 months or 3 weeks or 3 days, or in some cases 3 hours, or I'm out of business. That's not the way. But understanding how to effectively work within the cycle of each institution becomes important. And so then you could say, okay, if I need to have a problem solved by Monday or I'm out of business, most educational institutions will put their head down and say, it's really great knowing you. I'll meet you at the Tim Hortons for a coffee, because it's really hard to do it. But if you say, look, this is an important problem that we could hive out to an educational institution, if we understand, then we could take it back once some of the problems have been solved. So understanding the ecosystems is very important.
That makes a ton of sense to me. Jeff, your background is also rooted in industry and serving clients to support their R&D measures. Tell us what you have seen in your transition to helping clients on the business side of R&D.
Well, I mean, I want to echo a lot of what Darren just said. I think he was bang on most of his points. So forgive me if I'm going to repeat a few things, but maybe I'll flesh out some of the thoughts that I think he was sharing. Major difference, I think, is speed to market, and the overall incentives that are aligned there, or what the different groups are looking to achieve. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Darren touched on the academic cycle, the semesters and things like that. If you go to an academic institution and you have an interesting project you want to work on, maybe they want to have a PhD student who's going to support you in that. I mean, a PhD could be a 5-year journey. I might like to have an answer in 5 weeks. And so there's a significant misalignment there in terms of what it is that we want to accomplish. Another observation that I made fairly early on in my industrial research days was that there's a fundamental disconnect between industry, who wants to do a lot of really, really cool stuff and then tell nobody about it because it's intellectual property, it's privacy, it's secret, it's trade secrets, as opposed to academics who want to do a bunch of really, really cool stuff and tell everybody about it because the incentive is to publish or perish and things like that. That's a fundamental disconnect that I think is very difficult to reconcile. A lot of groups have done an excellent job, and hats off to the team at Milo, for example, at McMaster, around trying to establish what those paradigms might look like that will allow both groups to achieve what they need without that level of conflict. But that can be a bit of a minefield to navigate. It can also be extremely time consuming. Sometimes, a project that might take only 6 months worth of work might take a year to set up because you're going back and forth on getting details into paper and things like that. All of that plays to that idea of speed to market and what the incentives are in terms of getting a solution into the hands of the people that want to commercialize it. Another issue, I think, is scale. I think, when I think of my own graduate work at the University of Waterloo, we might have a great day and high five each other because we made, 30 grams of something that worked great. And that's awesome. And we had a great success, and I could write a paper about it. And those 30 grams were fantastic. But DeFasco might want to make 30 tons of something. So there's complete disconnect in terms of the scale. We had a project with DeFasco we were discussing where we wanted to look at some of their slag that they were doing. So this is just an example. They were doing some work on slag, and we thought we had some interesting things we wanted to study. And so we asked for a sample, and they said, sure, we can get you a few tons of that. And I thought, well, what I need is about a shoebox. Like, if you could provide me with that, that'd be great. But they don't think in terms of that scale. So that becomes a real challenge as well, is understanding where the scalability lies. That leads me to something else that I think about, and that's in terms of the technology readiness levels where we play. So for those of you who may not be familiar with the TRL kind of framework, That suggests that maybe TRL 1 and 2 is sort of the back of the envelope or back of the napkin stage where you're ideating about things, whereas going to sort of TRL 9 might be full commercialization and things like that. And so that gives a bit of a continuum in between to say, where are you in terms of the development of your technology? I think the colleges pride themselves, and Vicky, you'd probably agree, we don't play in the early stages where we're looking at brand new concepts or brand new technologies. It's much more in those middle TRLs, 5, 6, 7, where the technology might be proven, but we're not exactly sure how to scale it up yet, or maybe it's about adoption or implementation of that technology, and how do we reduce the risk around that adoption. In a lot of cases, that might look like we build infrastructure, and Vicky, you were talking about some of the AI tools you're developing. A company, especially in the Canadian market, whereas Darren pointed out, lots of SMEs, cash is king. There's not a lot of time. There's not a lot of money on the table. They don't have 30 eggheads in an ivory tower doing stuff. That's not the reality of most Canadian businesses. They have 1 or 2 people who wear 6 hats each, and they're trying to keep the lights on. And so finding a way to add capacity to them to explore these emerging technologies and understand the benefits those technologies might bring to their businesses, that's really where we live. So we can afford to invest in infrastructure, in expertise, in capital equipment, and then we can put it through its paces. The partner can come in, kick the tires a few times, take that risk out, and then they can make an informed decision. Yes, this is a good thing I want to do. I want to invest in AI. I want to invest in 3D printing. I understand how IoT technologies can benefit. But until you get over that hurdle, you don't really know what's going on. And it becomes a big risk for a Canadian small and medium-sized enterprise to bet on an emerging technology without really understanding what they're getting themselves into, because they don't have a lot of chips on the table that they can bet with. So 1 bet, 2 bets, that becomes existential. If we could take that risk away a little bit and help them to advance that or accelerate that adoption of that technology at a lower risk for them, I think we go a long way towards advancing our partners' success in adoption of technology. So those are the biggest differences that I've seen in terms of the approach to research that we take, and really what I find the most exciting or the most fun about the sort of the college sector that I play in is that idea where we don't have any risk. Doesn't matter to me if the project works or not. My students still have a good time. We still learn something. It was great. So we are in a position where we can absorb that risk without necessarily having to pay the piper if things go wrong, and we can help the partners by taking that risk off their plates. So that's the biggest area where I think we can help.
Yeah, really, that's awesome. Like, that's a great summary. I really appreciate that, because I think really it comes down to trust and understanding, right? So really setting the stage and making sure that that you and both parties, both the industry and the academia, are understanding what's next. Rick, in accessing funding to support R&D, what should businesses do to cover the cost of these collaborative, innovative projects?
I'm going to try to answer this with a bit of a structure. I'm going to start with the idea of the short-term engagement that I put forward with, limited scope and specificity. And I'll point out that the Canadian tax credit program, through a combination of federal and provincial tax credits, will help companies recover 27 to 44% of their payments just to start. There's no pre-application. They just need a valid contract with an eligible research institution. And that's a great recovery. So that's a retroactive tax, like many tax credits, as opposed to grants. We can do our business first and claim the tax credit later when we prepare our corporate tax return. Now, you can work with professionals to validate agreements. I'm happy to support and things like that, but that's the keeping it simple. We're going to recover 27 to 44% of what we pay an institution when they're doing work for us. I'm going to build on that, though, if I can, Cheryl. Slightly more
Please
advanced.
do. I'm doing the math here. Like, oh my
God. Those are funny numbers, but that's the bottom line numbers when you combine a whole bunch of things. But I want to talk now about this concept of a cyclical season of academics have with their availability of staff and students. And I'll say that government funding, when they get to grants, is the same. They have a seasonality to them based on the government year ending in March. And sometimes when you call, it might be the wrong time. If you're looking to, say, propose a project, you're going to collaborate with an academic through OCIs, collaborate to commercialize C2C program, for example, which might split the cost of working with an academic partner, may require some lead time, and so will the Industrial Research Assistance Program, or IRAP. just understand you can't assume funding is available immediately. It may require a full a season or year to put funding in place for some long-term collaborations from a subsidy government funding perspective as well. And then there's a whole other story I'll skip for now, but if people are interested in the long-term vision of moving IP out of academia to industry, that's a different answer, but I'm talking about collaborations in the short term for now. Thanks, Cheryl.
Yeah. And as you're talking about that, and everybody's talking about the cycles within the colleges and the universities, the academic cycle, the funding cycle, you know, and then the SME with needing money today. You know, if we're not getting things out the door, we're not making products, we're not in business. So this is like the perfect storm.
Yeah, it is. It's why those tax credits are so heavily used compared to grants and funding. Just the numbers are astoundingly different. The ratio might be 300 to 1, just for reference for the people on the call. Businesses have a hard time with grants on their own because of the complexities we've covered today with Daryl and Jeff, and you covered on the different seasons and the timing required to get it right.
Yeah, the seasonality to funding, that's for sure. Yeah, wow. Vicki, let's talk about talent. So talent development is critical for future economic prosperity. Tell us how Sheridan works with student researchers and young professors to boost their R&D with industry.
Okay, thanks, Cheryl. Yeah, so as I noted earlier, we place a huge emphasis on our students and engaging as many students as possible in research. It just is such a fantastic opportunity for them to learn those technical and soft skills, apply what they're learning in the classroom to external partners. It just augments the quality of their educational experience. But again, results in really well-trained and prepared future workers. So all of our projects engage a number of students. I've seen projects, CERT one summer hired 32 students, co-op students, for their research project. Yeah, so it's, I mean, again, there's lots of wide diversity in terms of how many students come onto projects, but these are just fabulous opportunities for them to gain those skills. We advertise those opportunities really broadly to really try to gain and gather and attract a diverse population of students to each of our projects. We work really closely with our faculties, obviously, but also our career integrated learning office. So that's the office in most colleges that oversee student co-ops and internships and placements and any other sort of work integrated learning opportunity, as well as Sheridan employment. So again, we cast the net quite broadly to gather as many really diverse students as we can. I also wanted to note for our students, we've been talking a little bit about funding and some of the challenges around that. So at Sheridan, we've been successful this past year in being awarded an umbrella grant through MyTax. And so MyTax is specifically designed to support student internships. So it's a grant specifically for students. And so this is a 2-year umbrella program. And so simply what it means is the application process now with us is a quick 2-week turnaround with MyTax rather than the several months often. So as we're talking about challenges around timelines and timely grant decisions, that MyTax umbrella program is really helpful. We also like to, within our faculties, there are many programs, our degree granting programs require capstone projects. So those are the summative thesis-based research project courses that students engage in. And really, we like to bring in as many industry and community partners to support that process as possible. Again, many students' projects can be based on solving a wicked problem with our external partners. For faculty, we absolutely agree. Research is a huge part of their talent development, and we've built a lot of supports to give faculty a chance to further develop a research skill set if it's been a while since they've engaged in research. At Sheridan, we've attracted a lot of PhD prepared faculty over the last few years. And so we've got some new faculty who are really hungry to do research and dip their toe in, but they may be new to the college research ecosystem. So we've got a 7-week professional development program that we've developed in-house that really supports any faculty who are interested in undertaking funded research projects with external partners to understand what that's all about. What kind of grants can they access? How do you write a strong grant application, a competitive grant application? But part of the curriculum is very much focused on student mentorship. So how do you be a good mentor to your student research assistants on your team? How do you support their learning and development, but also managing the relationships with external partners? It's a really key, important relationship. And if you're not used to working with external partners, sometimes those projects can go a little bit astray. And so we've talked a little bit around, what's important, what's key for a good collaboration. And I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But again, for faculty, we've been really fortunate at Sheridan. There's a tremendous amount of support for research at this college. More so, I would say, than some of my other college colleagues around Ontario get to enjoy. And so we've got specific grant funds that support faculty members pursuing their research interests as well. So maybe I'll stop there and we can move on to another panelist.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. So, I mean, things run through my head too here. Like, do the students come in as like researchers and entrepreneurs, or are they getting inspired while they're there? It looks like faculty are coming and then getting support and inspiration while they're there. I think that sounds like a really, really, really nice combination.
And I would say yes and yes and yes to all of that. It's everything.
I used to run a program across Ontario that was focused on the co-op experiential learning programs for high school students in prep for colleges and universities. And I know exactly what you're talking about, the inspiration and the excitement that they come in working with industry. So that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Darren, how does McMaster typically structure research agreements related to collaborative projects with industry?
Great question. And I'd like to thank Jeff for the shameless plug out of Milo, our McMaster in Industrial Liaison Office. And we are so fortunate to have Dr. Gay Yuatang and her team there to facilitate and make the process as easy as possible. And so there isn't one size fits all. They will work on contracts, depending whether it's a research contract, whether it's conducting research at macro licensing technology. So they're very experienced in running through the process, and they're really easy to work with. And 2 examples that I'll give you. When I was in industry, I actually worked with Gay, and she helped me license in technology that was instrumental in helping solve a problem. It was so easy. It was like, okay, this is it, and we were able to do it. So the key is to make it as easy as possible. And then if you look at our recent success, Fusion Pharmaceuticals, which is a spin out from McMaster, and see, it was recently bought over by AstraZeneca for $2.4 billion. So our first unicorn. That happened because all along the way, Milo was there to guide the process, make sure that they were ready for seed funding and venture capital, and then eventually for the sale to AstraZeneca. So I'm really happy. I don't have to do the contracts. I don't have to know the ins and outs. I work collaboratively with Milo, so as do our researchers, as do our companies, and they're able to answer questions. We have standard templates, so we're not reinventing the wheel, but we also realize that every situation might be slightly different, may have slightly different desired outcomes, whether it's part of a solution or whole solution, but Dr. Yuatang and her team just work through the process and make it. And we've heard over and over when John Valiant was giving his talk after selling the company to AstraZeneca, he made sure to point out how easy it was to work with Milo in the process. So if people are thinking it could be a barrier to work with an educational institution, it doesn't have to be that way. And McMaster does a great job, but so do our peers, at colleges and other universities as well. So having a contract that people understand upfront, don't wait to have a success and then do the contract, because that's a recipe for a disaster. And no offense if there are lawyers on thing, but lawyers get really excited because there's ambiguity, and then there'll be back and forth lawsuits. So get that up front and have somebody run you through the process, so that'll work with the BDOs to make sure companies are maximizing their tax benefits available to them, how to optimize it. It's all part of the collective. So I'll stop there, but high praise to Milo, and thanks, Jeff, for pointing them out.
Wow, a unicorn. That's definitely something to be proud of coming out of a research institution. So great job, and a good plug to Rick. We'll get to you from a BDO perspective. Jeff, access to talent and coverage for IP are important considerations when working with colleges and universities. How do businesses gain access to other academic resources like physical equipment, lab, and computing resources? Ooh, that's a big one.
Yeah, that is a big one. So as Darren mentioned, groups like Milo are great for that in accessing a lot of that work around IP. Colleges are a little bit different in so much as, generally speaking, and this is not, I'm not going to say that it's 100% of the time this way, but generally speaking, colleges don't take rights to the intellectual property under development in the work that they're doing. And that we view that oftentimes as a major differentiator for the research sector in the colleges versus at the universities. And so if a partner comes to us, we actually can shortcut a lot of that conversation, because we don't take the IP, so it's fine. We are now through some of the work that the provincial government has been doing and the federal government around protection of IP. There is a move towards understanding it a little bit better, and colleges have been pushed, and Colleges Ontario have been pushed to sort of come up with a position statement around how we're going to manage that. I think Vicky would probably agree that didn't go great internally in some of the conversations we were having, because it really isn't in our DNA. It's not the way we do things. But generally speaking, when a partner wants to access resources through a college, the agreement is that the IP will reside with the partner for their commercial aims. That touches a little bit as well, I think, on the TRL stuff that I was talking about earlier. Generally speaking, the technology is advanced to a point where new IP is not really being created. It's more a reduction of practice, or perhaps lessons learned around commercialization or scale. We're not necessarily inventing something brand new. And so we sort of just say, you know what, this is your thing. You're going to run with the ball. We're going to help you get there. So that does simplify things. That having been said, access to resources like physical equipment, lab and computing resources, this goes back to what I was saying earlier about the adoption of technology and the risk that we're talking about. We have access to, in some cases, to capital equipment funding, capital resources that we can build infrastructure that most companies would not have access to, or that might be cost prohibitive to duplicate. And I believe, this is just me personally speaking, not necessarily on behalf of Mohawk, but I believe that's a great investment of public dollars, is to say, we're going to build this test bed. It's going to be open and accessible to our businesses. People can come in and experiment with it. As I said earlier, they can kick the tires, they can learn. If that helps to accelerate the adoption of technology across the Canadian landscape, I think that's a pretty good bang for our buck. So colleges and universities are a great place to go to understand what some of those resources could offer, how to trial them. Maybe there's a piece of analytical equipment that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. As an example, in our School of Health, we recently launched, in partnership with McMaster's Health Sciences programs, we've launched a new MRI, which is largely for research purposes. So that's pretty unique. There are no MRIs in Ontario that aren't booked up, 3 years in advance, scoping knees and things like that. We will do some clinical work and that's an interesting model that provides training and some clinical work, but a meaty chunk of the time on that machine is dedicated to research initiatives. So there's an opportunity for clinicians to come in, use an MRI to understand, say, scope of practice or new clinical techniques, and the adoption of those clinical techniques will reduce wait times on all the other MRIs which are being used clinically, which will help to accelerate elimination of wait lists and things like that, and you'll be able to get your need done faster because of techniques that are in development in these kinds of research pockets. those models don't exist anywhere else in sort of the public sector. You need to go to an academic setting to understand how to access those resources. And then once you do that, you can take those new practices that you develop, reduce those things to practice, and then bring them into the commercial market. And that can have, you can amplify the impact of that 100 times. So I think it's a great opportunity for especially Canadian businesses where they don't have access to that kind of infrastructure. Definitely partner with academics, because those resources are at your disposal for exactly that reason.
I agree 100%. It's a test bed open to business, where we can test the technology and help the adoption of Canadian inventions. I think that's amazing. This MRI sounds perfect. Definitely needed. So good for you guys. Rick, BDO is a strong supporter of Haltech, or Innovation Factory, and the tech ecosystem in Ontario and across Canada. Can you tell us why BDO supports the sector and how else you can help R&D based businesses?
We support the sector because we believe we can make a difference in helping companies scale and grow. Cheryl, sometimes great advice is what they need. And we think we have a role in providing some of that advice. And that segues nicely into the idea that we see many businesses need help with capital planning and roadmaps in their cash flow. And we've heard that from some of the people on the call today. It really matters. And so we try to take that perspective with entrepreneurs to show them how, if they can secure venture capital investment for a 24-month runway, can we extend that to 4 or 5 years under certain conditions with the combination of underfunding programs and pragmatic management? That's the biggest thing I'd say we'd like to support R&D businesses, is the pragmatic perspective of cash and time. And of course, that comes with, my specialty is government incentives and tax credits. So that's part of the way we leverage investments from commercial parties and R&D to try to make as much work as long as we can. I'm going to sneak in that was my real answer, but I'm going to sneak in 2 other comments that many entrepreneurs also become myopic. They focus very, in a strange way on their business, and they lose perspective that, some of the inputs in their chemical products are naturally derived, so they could qualify for funding from the forestry industry because they're using cellulose from pulp and paper, or Natural Products Canada can support them. And they don't see themselves as a natural product, but they are by the government's definition. And sometimes we have female founders, which allows them access to special types of debt financing. So a broad perspective is maybe a second element we add as an outsider to how their business can access funding. I'll move from there. Cheryl, thank you very much.
Yeah, helping companies scale and grow. Who doesn't want that? It sounds like a great way to be able to work with our academic partners, industry, and then having a bit of that safety net or that outside lens. The pragmatic management. Yes, I get it, but sometimes it's not as much fun as just going crazy, but that's okay. But we like that. And the roadmaps and for cash flow. I think these are all really important tools and supports for some industry that's coming in that are being supported by our friends at Haltech or Innovation Factory, and who are all within that partner ecosystem of everyone on the call. So this really makes a lot of sense to me. I'm wondering, I'm just going to throw a couple more questions out there to you guys, and maybe we'll just start, Vicky, I'll just start off with you, but I'll ask this question and then everybody can answer the same question. We'll do a little comparison in my world. How can we amplify the uptake of industry collaborating with academia? Are there barriers you see working on collaborative projects? If you had a magic wand, what would you change to make R&D collab landscape better? Vicky, if we can start with you.
Oh boy, we need a whole other hour to talk about this. And actually, Darren and Jeff have talked a lot about what I see as a lot of the barriers. That notion that academia, the cycle of academia doesn't always necessarily match up with the speed of business. I would also add to that the time it takes if a company is working with a college or a university to apply for a research grant. So by the time, you have those conversations, you come to agreement on a scope of a project and a grant, particularly in the federal funding that we access, writing that application. And many of them are not just open calls, right? If there's a very specific deadline for an application and that happens once a year, like a CCSIF, for example, then if you're coming to us in February, you're waiting a whole other year. So I would say, you know, timing around some of the funding that we do access, and if I could wave a magic wand, it would be something like that to address that. What we've started doing at Sheridan is really trying to get a little bit more innovative and creative as to how we continue to meet our partner needs without being exclusively reliant on grants, federal and provincial grants. So in some of our really large multi-year grant awards, like the MyTax, like our Mobilize, which is focused on health and well-being, we create a seed pot. So we hive off about half of the total budget to create a seed fund that we just administer internally. So the speed is quick, turnaround time is weeks, couple of weeks for an application to go through. So for our Mobilize seed funds, we can fund, you know, up to $30,000, which is a fairly healthy pot. Leveraging that MyTax, you've got 45,000. So that's a fairly decent sum of money to at least kickstart a new project. We've also started engaging in working with legal to engage with some fee for research contracts. So for companies that bring us an idea where it doesn't fit, or there's not a really obvious grant fund or a timing issue, they need the results now, we can talk about a fee for research contract. So those are sort of my magic wand and the barriers that I see. I would love to see a sort of a fundamental shift in the funding landscape for both colleges and universities.
Do you think like a continuous granting? Is that what you're thinking, or like a rather than a closed call? Or?
There are lots and lots of ideas. I'd also love to see a little bit more focus as we're turning our attention at Sheridan to the importance of social innovation.
Yeah. Makes sense. Darren, what do you think about this?
So I think I agree with everything Vicky has said, but I think we need to have a cultural shift as a country as well. I think it starts that industry's gotten somewhat addicted to having government fund solution of problems. So if the money's not there, well, we'll wait or we won't do it. And that's resulted in decreased productivity as well as lost opportunity. So, if I had a magic wand, I would start on that cultural shift to working. I'd also break down the perceived silos. I mean, colleges, and you go to college for this, you go to university this, industry does this, or community does that. It's time to break down those silos and say, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Who has the solution? Who has a part of the solution? Can we work effectively together? And in order to do this more collaborative approach, it's like we need more time and more funding to host networking events where people can just come and meet, create the conditions of serendipity. So my hope is that like we can stop, trying to pigeonhole things and saying, well, Jeff or Vicky, like what part of the solution you have? How can Mac help? And ultimately, what's stopping companies from growing? So we really need to shift our attention from not only launching startup companies, they're great, you occasionally get a unicorn, yay us, but 98% of Canadian companies are small and medium sized. How do we start scaling them? How do we go from a small to medium and medium to large? And what are the barriers? And the only way you don't get to what the true barrier, if a company says, well, I don't have the money, well, we can't help you because educational institutions aren't banks. But man, we have talent, we have students, we have infrastructure, we can help. Let's figure out how to do it. And Jeff mentioned the way colleges work, but yeah, they give away IP, but they expect something in return, and that's opportunities for students, opportunities for faculty to engage in problem solving. So if I had a magic wand, I would say, let's break down all these barriers, bring everybody together and go into more what problem you're trying to solve and who can help. and then figure out what it is need, because sometimes it's not as expensive as you think it is. Sometimes solutions are there, but if you're not willing, so we need more openness from industry and community to open up their kimonos and show us what are your true problems, what's stopping you from, and that's tough because if I'm a company and I've been there, do I want to tell the world I have this problem? Because my competitor could be in the room, right? I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't say it. But we need to get to the stage where we're looking at what is the problem. And Mac pioneered in the medical thing, problem-based research. And I think that's the solution. What is the problem you're trying to solve? And how do we make it fair and equitable to all the parties? And then how do we get industry or community, I'd say community, but community generally doesn't have a lot of resources, but they do. How do we get industry to put money on the table and say, this is important and this is what I'll get from it. And this is a fair and equitable way of sharing it. So that would be my hope, my dream, my magic wand. And if I could put everybody into the same boat and put us in the middle of the ocean. And if you don't work together, you're not getting back to shore. So.
Yeah, that seems like a strategy. Let's hope people can swim, but I like that. So you're really kind of saying stop the round peg, square hole kind of philosophy, and let's start thinking really about what's the problem and solve the problem rather than create more problems.
And is it worth the investment? So having that mindset, what is your return on the innovation? What is your return on that? Why are you doing it? If you're doing it because it's curiosity based, and we've all had people say, I always wondered, since I was a wee little lad, if we did this, what would happen? And that's great. That's curiosity driven, but should we be putting our resources to that? But if a company said, look, if I could figure out how to change this process or how I could do something better. I mean, you look at social agencies, why can they only accept X number of clients? Well, maybe they have a technology. Maybe a technology can help. Maybe if you automated the process or used, as Vicky said, AI, and maybe that could then go from being able to handle, X to Y, where Y is greater than X. So like, how do we get out of our same mode? If we do the same mode, we'll get the same results. And, honestly, they haven't been bad, but they're not great. And, Canada traditionally scores low on the innovation scale. So maybe it's time to start being more innovative.
I'm in, I support it. Jeff, what do you think?
Well, Darren took the words out of my mouth on a lot of points. In full disclosure, he and I have had coffee and discussed this in the past, so it's maybe not surprising that our thoughts are aligned. But yeah, if I had a magic wand, it would definitely be that cultural shift that Darren talked about. I think that as Canadians, we tend to be risk averse and we tend to stick to our knitting, and that's to our detriment. So whether it's on an OECD ranking of innovation or productivity or anything else. When you hear stories like the unicorn, Fusion being the example we've talked about today, we get very excited because that's great because we had a huge success. But what it also means is that we built a company that had tremendous potential globally, and then we sold it to the United States, or presumably AstraZeneca might not be a US company, but effectively that's what's going to happen. That there's this mindset that we hit a base hit or a double, and then we took our chips off the table because good for us, and we never really pushed to try and see where that could take us, and as a result of that, there aren't really any Canadian behemoth companies that are left that aren't banks that can play at that scale, and I think there's real implications for that. I went to the University of Waterloo. I grew up through the RIM years. I watched the impact that sort of meteoric growth could have on the community, and all the not only spin-off companies, but also spin-off ancillary community benefits that came out of that. Things like the Perimeter Institute for Theoretical Research. Who thinks there's going to be a theoretical research institute in Waterloo, Ontario? But it happened because of the fact that RIM happened to be there and the money was there. There's tremendous things that we can do at the global scale once you get those kinds of resources behind us. And unfortunately, our culture is not aligned to doing that. We tend to get to a certain point and then we start looking for the exit for any number of reasons, some of which are very valid. But there's a certain kind of push that we need to take that next step, and we don't tend to take it. Instead, what ends up happening is you get, Falconbridge and Inco were across the street from each other for 100 years, sniping at each other, and then as a result, neither of them are Canadian. Like, that can't possibly be a good outcome. All the nickel's still on the ground now, but none of it's Canadian anymore. That's a terrible outcome. But those tend to be the kinds of stories that we hear. So if I had a magic wand, that's the first thing that I would want to change. Would just be to look for those opportunities for collaboration and to try and have a national focus on what's it going to take to build that champion, those champions that are going to have scale.
I hope you have the answer somewhere. Maybe we'll find it within this group. I think that's great. Rick, what's your thoughts on this?
I think everybody's touched on it in a variety of aspects. I think it's I'll just use the word community in my answer to say that I think it's very true that businesses and small and medium businesses in particular in different sectors don't see academic researchers as a part of their community, and we need to fix that. Whether it's through Darren's boat analogy or some of the suggestions Jeff had, or I'm sure what Vicky's going to add. You know, the manufacturers often see opportunities to improve their business. They're not ignorant. They're smart people, but they don't see a way to solve it with the resources they have. I wish they would reach out for some limited engagements to find out what's possible. You know, by collaborating with some of that equipment that Jeff's mentioned, and everybody in the calls had great answers. You know, my tax would be great, Vicky, to have a student chew on a problem for a while, very limited cost. You know, that's a cost sharing program to get someone who might be in their master's or PhD level to chew on a problem for a business. But the small, medium manufacturers and the, you know, not .com, but the rapidly moving tech software startups, they don't see outsourcing to academics as a part of their community. And it would be a great way to move innovation forward because they know the problems. They have the problems that technology could address to innovate. We've got to get the sense of community so they see the great institutions on this call as a part of the solution. And I want to take a chance now to plug everybody. I have favorites at every one of the institutions on the call. My long-term mentor is now part of the organization Jeff mentioned at Mohawk. I've done tons of work with professors at McMaster and have favorite professors and industrial relations people at Sheridan as well. They've all been great supporting me and my clients. So we have good institutions on the call here with a great track record. We just need to do more. I think it's communication. I'll pause there. Thanks.
You know what, I really liked what you were just talking about, like with that you've got favorites in each of the institutions, you know, that you're building the partnerships. And I imagine that's kind of part of that cultural shift that everybody's talking about. It's just a bit of a slower process that it's a one-on-one. And I think it was Vicky had talked about mentorship too, so that if somebody who's already active and supportive in that area perhaps could be the one that's saying, here's how we can maybe shift it a little bit to work through the what the next steps would be. So I think that's all fantastic. Hey, we've got there's a question from the field here. I think Rick is typing an answer, but it was like, it's actually to you, Jeff, and it's like, can Jeff be a bit more specific about what types of funding might be available to female founders? Maybe Rick, you've got the answer right at your fingertips. So would you like to
take it if that's okay?
Sure.
I'll start by saying this is a well understood problem that government's been moving towards for a long time. And so I will begin the answers to say that there are funds set aside through the Women in Technology Venture Fund and the Thrive Venture Fund. You can look them up at BDC, a government-affiliated, risk-taking agency that's reserved just for female founders. And so this is, I think, a wonderful natural fit. That money is going to be spent on the best business propositions women can bring forward to that fund, and they will be funded. And I think that's a remarkable program to address this sort of this inequality issue we have, where the demographics don't make sense in our entrepreneurship right now in Canada. The funded companies don't have the right ratios, and so I'll call out those two funds as I think the best solution. And I'll also stretch down to say that there's many debt-based financing. I'll mention a program called Futurepreneur that I think many female founders would have success at, although it's not exclusively targeted at them. They certainly are particularly concerned with equity and equality in the administration of their program. And so if you happen to be looking for not secured debt-based financing and you're under the age of 40, I'd look at Futurepreneur as a starting point as well. There's 3 to start, and I think there's more.
Wow, that's awesome. And Jeff, did you have any more to add, or was that?
No, I guess only to say that there is a significant move, especially at the federal level, to support female entrepreneurs and innovators. And so many of the grants that are available to, certainly at the college level, I don't know that there's necessarily one specifically targeting women as entrepreneurs, but I believe would be well received if we had women as women-led businesses as partners. Some of the metrics that we report back on also include how many women-led entrepreneurs have you engaged with. So there's certainly a healthy appetite in the sector to partner with women-led businesses, and many of the colleges, I know Sheridan is also a member of what's called the Dimensions program. There was some significant efforts underway to improve equity, diversity, and inclusion across the research community in the academic and post-secondary sector as well. So the researchers themselves looking to be more diverse, but also looking to partner with businesses and partners led by equity-seeking groups, members of equity-seeking groups. So there's certainly a strong appetite to support our women entrepreneurs.
This all sounds awesome. All right, here's a big question. If a business has an innovative idea, how can they start working with you? Is there an ideal company type or industry for a collaborative project? What would be like step 1? Vicki, how about we start with you?
Well, step 1 is just getting in contact with us. So either our generator at sheridancollege.ca, which is our general email box, or on our website, sheridancollege.ca/research. And on the website, there's actually a partner intake form. And I know the vast majority of colleges and universities have the same sort of structure where there is a partner intake form. So what that's going to do is get a partner to us, to somebody on my team, so that we can have that initial conversation. And really that's where it all starts, because what we've found over the years is not all partners come to us only for research. And so as we have that discussion and we tease ideas out and they're thinking out, sometimes they're just looking for students. They're looking for a co-op student for the summertime. And so, or it is for research, and we can continue that conversation, get them to the right faculty member, the right research center, talk about the different funding opportunities that are available to them, or triage them to another department in Sheridan. So I would say that is the best thing to do, is just to reach out. In terms of ideal companies, you know, it's interesting because so many of our grants, particularly the tri-agency, have very strict sort of eligibility criteria. Now, ideally for us, we would say, despite those eligibility criteria, a company that's going to most benefit, I think, from research activities is one that is able to actually use the results of the research at the end of the day. Whether it is a not-for-profit who uses the results of a program and evaluation to improve the services and supports that they're providing to a marginalized population in our communities, or it's a prototype that goes on for further development and commercialization. So a company that's able to actually use the results and who really wants to be a collaborative partner. So I think to Darren's earlier point, we are academic institutions. Really for our main purpose is for the education of our students and to give them just an amazing educational experience. So the partner is a really crucial aspect to that relationship. And we also don't want to get to the end of the line of a project and the partner come back and say, that's not what I meant. That's not quite what I meant. So we want somebody right there with us in lockstep, so we know that we're addressing the needs.
Lockstep together makes perfect sense. Oh my God, Darren, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm thinking keep this process as simple as possible. We're a large institution, as is Sheridan and Mohawk, so I would say reach out to myself or a member of the OVPR team. We probably won't be the person that you need to reach with, but we can connect you. And since problems have become very complex, so very often you think you need this, but then you say, you know, what about combining engineering with health science? And we saw that during COVID, where we had our engineers with our health science people work together on problems that industry brought. Remember when we were all going to be toast if we didn't have ventilators? Well, we were able to work and bring the right people. So my advice is reach out to myself. I will connect you. I'll do the best I can. Or remember, like a Jen Trechak on the OVPR team, and we will run around and facilitate the right connections. Because again, I go back to there are literally thousands of researchers, and some of which are more looking for opportunities to work with, others not. At MAC, we have a system, we have associate deans of research, so we could bring an opportunity and they could bring it to their faculties and we look for it. So I'd say keep it real simple, reach out to myself or to the Office of VP Research. We'll help you navigate through the process. That's the good first step.
I like that. And just for the group that's listening, we can certainly provide everybody's contact information post event in a summary sending out. So, or you can just Google them because that helps too. Anyway, Jeff, what are you thinking about this? What's the best steps for you?
Best step is definitely to reach out to IdeaWorks. So as I said initially, IdeaWorks is sort of the hub that coordinates these activities, and there's a business development team that's there looking to build new partnerships. Happy to welcome you for a tour of our facilities, tour of your facilities, introduce you to the different teams that potentially bring skill sets that would benefit. So really a starting point, I think, as has been mentioned already, starting point is a conversation to understand the needs. What does an ideal partner look like? I think the ideal partner is sort of that Canadian SME, not necessarily, well, we work with companies of all sizes, but you know, those Canadian SMEs where the capacity that we're bringing is going to be really game changing for the work that they're doing, and so you know, there's a clearly defined effort that they want to take on, and that initiative is going to take them to a particular objective that's going to help them grow their business. I think there's really good opportunities for partnership there and ways that we can have an immediate impact. So
I like that game-changing interaction. I think that's it's kind of what everybody's really looking for. And Rick, what are you thinking from the business perspective? You're bringing industry to the colleges, to the universities. What are you thinking? What makes that really strong collaborative project?
Well, I like taking risks, Cheryl. So I'll go back to that spirit of innovation. I really believe that I want partnership in risks and ventures that are new. I think companies are great at what they're great at, and that's not where I see academic collaboration. I see it in the ancillary opportunities they find along the way that go unmet. And I mean, my dream is to have all of those launch great new businesses and not have that opportunity or IP or trade secrets die with my SMEs, and instead bring them forward with work with academic institutions. So that's personally, to answer your most recent question, that's my passion. But I will link back to it to say, I'll just do a quick plug. If people want to engage with me, typically my clients have employees. Once you're this business size of that, I'd love to help you with your accounting, tax, and tax credits. But I'm also a volunteer at Innovation Factory in Hall Tech. Anybody on the call can book time with me through those institutions for at least an hour, and we can make those regular if you're interested in mentorship as an entrepreneur. I'll leave it there, Cheryl. Thanks.
And that's a great way, I think, that just to highlight that as well, is that industry is supporting the whole ecosystem. So from the volunteering at Hall Tech or Innovation Factory. I think, Rick, I'm going to change your name to Risks though instead of Rick, and I think that'll sure. You'll be able to use that as a new handle moving forward. We've got a couple more minutes in the call. We really have it scheduled for about another 30, but I think we've got about another 10-15 minutes worth of conversation, if that's good for everybody. I have a question, and this question is, what's next? What's next for Sheridan, McMaster, Mohawk Research, and what's coming down the pipe for funding opportunities from Rick's perspective? So Rick, I've always started you as last, so I'm going to start you as first. So you can talk about bring on the money, and everybody else can talk about how we can use it in research.
What's coming down the pipeline? Well, I'm gonna take a few chances here to say the recent federal budget changed the capital gains inclusion rate that will affect entrepreneurship significantly and small angels and ventures. But the solution came in the promise of a CEI program. If we're founding a business and we own 10% of the shares, voting shares through perpetuity, briefly, we will get an exception. And so that program is designed to keep founders tax-free when they sell parts of their business, and hopefully not all of it, as Jeff mentioned, to a big foreign company. But that's a big change that will change how we structure companies. I think I'll mention that's a little tax heavy, but I'll mention that's significant for many of us who work in the venture space. I will also advocate for technology adoption. We've seen accelerated, capital cost reductions, and I think there's a role for academics to play in helping businesses adopt technology. You heard that from Jeff with IdeaWorks Labs, and certainly all the institutions here provide a role in helping Canada spend more in capital investments in R&D, and I think a lot of those investments make the businesses more productive. And I think if I predict what the next federal budget will be, we'll see a lot more funding for technology adoption and productivity investments. Looking forward, I really do think this is another way that academics can lead the way to show what's possible for Canadian businesses. We saw a program called CDAP get canceled. We didn't get a replacement in this budget. That was a Canadian technology adoption program. I'm looking forward for more on technology adoption in the future. So not necessarily R&D, but more of that applied engineering and the art of what's possible. I'll pause there. Thank you, Sherryl.
Imagine more investment in tech adoption. Gets me all excited. Jeff, what are you thinking about this? What's next?
What's next for Mohawk?
Yeah.
Well, we have some pretty ambitious plans underway around some new areas that we want to focus on. Biotech being one of the big ones. It's biotech and biopharma manufacturing is a big area of growth in the sector in the region, and so that's something that we want to support. I think the colleges have kind of in their DNA is close ties to the economic development of the communities where we serve, and so as the city of Hamilton and Burlington moves into the space of biomanufacturing and biotech, that's something that we want to make sure we're aligned with. So that's an area of focus for us going forward. And Darren and I have a number of conversations about how we could partner around that. And then the other I would say is sustainability. So for much of the same reason, as people like DeFesco and Stelco are looking at decarbonization and finding ways to adopt new technologies, be that hydrogen or carbon capture or anything else that's going to help to support a move towards a low carbon future. That's something that we also really want to be a part of. So that involves development of new skills, as well as new programming and new infrastructure to support companies who are developing climate solutions. So I would say those are the two biggest areas of technology that we want to focus on that are kind of emerging for us, and all the ancillary things that go along with that. So whether that's AI or IoT or advanced manufacturing techniques, but in terms of those two big themes, is probably where our biggest focuses are going to be in the coming years.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially the biotech, biopharma, and working with Mac. There's got to be the linkages there. Darren, maybe do you want to comment?
Yeah, I'm gonna take a slightly different approach to answering a question and build on what Jeff said. I mean, McMaster has every intention of continuing to be Canada's most corporate friendly university and work. But where I see the whole education stakeholder system working is in finding new ways of collaborating, bringing multiple stakeholders together. And I'll give the example that Jeff did. We're co-leading a Canadian biomanufacturing research hub with University of Ottawa. We formed partnerships not only with Mohawk, but with Dalhousie, with Vito in Saskatchewan, with ACTM in Alberta. And so these are large consortia because the problems are big. When the next emerging health threat comes, we don't have to respond. And it's not going to be Mac that solves the problem. or another institution. It'll be how can collectively we work together. And so part of the advantage, or part of the reason why I see new models and new partnership, you look at the 5 hubs that were established, Canadian biomanufacturing, because when COVID hit, we suddenly realized, oh, we can't manufacture, we can't service the health needs of Canadians. How do we solve that? And so you got to bring multiple, and those stakeholders are everything from the government through the NRC, Health Canada, through academia, various partners, all partners, not just universities, but colleges as well, because they play an important role, and they have a lot to add to industry, who has an incredible knowledge base, and so they can add a part of the solution. And how do you work collaboratively? So I see where we're going is these new ways of figuring out how to move things quickly, how to move things together. How do we work so we don't replicate, but we complement what we're doing with each other. And that's not going to be easy, because traditionally we've worked in a siloized environment. Government has an idea, we want this, and they go to this stakeholder, and not considering, I mean, even if you look at the community aspect of it, when you look at why was there vaccine hesitancy? Why were communities not embracing? And I'll give you an example. We hosted a vaccinology conference, and our Indigenous leaders told the story. So when Canada finally took out our checkbook and said we can't manufacture, but we got a large checkbook, let's buy some vaccines, and we were able to get the vaccines, we said, okay, well, who are the most deserving groups, because we have a limited capacity? And we went to the elder population, went to the Indigenous population. And you'd think, oh, that's good, Canadian values, this is really good. But they were appalled, both of them. And we said, like, why? And why? Because the Indigenous population had traditionally been the test subjects for new medicines. So we were just saying, here you go, use it. And they're going, we've seen that story. Why don't you guys try it out and see if there are any negative side effects, and then come back to us? And the elder population was like you just want us gone, right? So both groups, where we thought we were doing the right thing, weren't handled right, because we didn't understand the social dynamics. We didn't understand how to effectively deal with those two populations. So with Indigenous, it would have been better to use a 2-role agreement. This is what we have, this is what we're doing, here's what it is, can we help you? If you're interested, come, what are your thoughts? But instead we went back to our old ways of doing things, and that has to change. So I see breaking down silos and new models of how we work effectively together, because at the end of the day, what do we want? We want, in the healthcare space, we want Canadians' health to be addressed. So that's the ultimate goal. How we get there effectively and quickly, and as a nation, that's complex. So how do we all work together, and how do we develop these mechanisms that will allow multiple stakeholders interactions and work effectively? And I think the Canadian government, to their credit, and the provincial government as well, are working on mechanisms such as the CBRF and the hubs, and how do you engage, because it's more efficient. So why pay multiple universities to do the same thing when collectively you have piece of puzzle? So there is money out there. So we have to change our way of how we allocate this and how we work with industry. And so that's where I see the biggest challenge and opportunity.
Wow, I didn't even think of all of that as we were going through it, just trying to survive through COVID. And I agree. I think like the siloed environment, like how do we move past that, and how do we get out into the forefront? Vicky, what are your thoughts? What's next for you?
So first of all, here, Darren, absolutely, we fully agree. And there are actually some really lovely, very successful examples of college university partnerships with industry. So we are seeing that a lot more. Still not nearly enough though. So for Sheridan, lots on the go, like everybody. We are continuing to work on our interdisciplinary focus. So Jeff alluded to Sheridan's focus on EDI and research, and building EDI and research, and really our work with equity-seeking communities across Halton and Peel to ensure that their research, innovation, and entrepreneurship needs are met, including, if the caller is still on, Our Edge Entrepreneurship Hub has a focus on female and BIPOC change makers and entrepreneurs in terms of the supports that they provide. Jeff talked earlier a little bit about the changing landscape around IP, particularly for colleges. So there is some funding that has been awarded to both colleges and universities this year, Sheridan being one. So we're building our capacity at the college by recruiting a position that will support our industry and community partners in their IP efforts, either navigating the landscape of patents and trademarks or helping to develop that commercialization strategy for the research outcomes. There's a wee nuance that Jeff was talking a little bit about for colleges. IP, keeping the IP is not in our DNA, and he's absolutely right. There is another nuance that many of the grant funds that we access specifically specify that the IP shall rest with our community partners. So we actually can't keep the IP, as well as not really wanting to. And we're in year 2 of our 5-year mobilized grant, $3.25 million to support industry and community partners in their research and innovation needs around health and well-being. So mental and physical health, community well-being, and the technologies that support that. And we are always looking for partners for that, for those seed funds.
Wow, you guys are making my head spin. There's so much going on. I'm seeing that, the partnerships are key, university, college, industry funding all needs to be working together to do that cultural shift that you're talking about, that there's a collective desire. I see the feel and level of understanding and respect from each of you to each other and to your organizations and institutions of what you're bringing to the table. And so I'm super hopeful. Is there closing remarks that you'd like to leave the participants with, like some final thoughts? And Vicki, let's start with you.
We've talked about so much, Cheryl. I mean, I don't want to reiterate. I would say to the audience members, reach out. Just reach out to any one of us or all of us. Just have a conversation and let's see where things go.
Darren, your final thoughts.
Yeah, I want to leave with the thought of optimism. It's real. It can be done. It's not a theoretical exercise. Educational institutions, whether it's the colleges or universities, or ideally both of us working together, can make a difference. So don't be risk averse. Don't say it can't be done. I don't know how to work. It's so complicated. I don't know how to do it. Take the time. There is a learning curve, both from the academic side and the industry side. But once you start building that trust and demonstrating that you could deliver, I think the benefits to Canada are huge. So I'm encouraging people to reach out and try it. What's worst can happen? It doesn't work, you're disappointed, you never do it again. I don't think that'll happen. But what happens if you do that great project and all of a sudden you're able to launch a product more efficiently, or a new product or something? And it's because an educational institution such as McMaster or Mohawk or Sheridan has been there to help you. And those are great success stories. And so the other thing I would say is, don't be afraid to tell people. It's like, I told 2 people, told 2 people. And so if you're enjoying working with it, we need to, as a collective, multiple stakeholders, stop being the best kept secret of the Canadian innovation system. We're here to support. We have the tools, we have the infrastructure. We've been supported by both federal and provincial government to have infrastructure and talent, and our students are hungry. They're hungry for problems to solve. They want to make a difference. And so you have a system that's looking for problems. You have people who have problems. Why don't we get together and see what happens? So that would be my final comment.
It's a good call to action for sure. Jeff, what are you thinking?
Pretty much everybody that comes through, and I'm sure Vicki, you probably had the same experience. Everybody that comes through the hallways of Mohawk says something that sounds an awful lot like, wow, I had no idea you guys did this here. I think there's not a lot of understanding or visibility into what the college sector is or does, or the kinds of resources we have to offer, or the things that we have. So I would say give us a call and just come for a tour, just check it out. Even if all you want to do is just come for a tour, that's still something that we would love to have, a conversation we would love to have. Generally speaking, in my experience, once we get a dialogue going, we'll find a way that we can collaborate, and we're always looking for new opportunities. Even if a project is not particularly successful, the outcome that you could get might still be that you identify a great new candidate that you might want to hire afterwards, a new student that's coming up that you work closely with, and they bring some skills that you're looking for, and we're all in a war for talent. So there's really no downside to coming and kicking the tires a little bit. So please do consider giving us a call and coming in for a look around and a chat, and we'll see where things go from there.
And sometimes that whole, fail fast is a great way to go too. It's just as beneficial as the long-term success. Rick.
I'll just reiterate, it's about making those connections. So my other two colleagues both highlighted this. We've just got to talk. Their sweeteners are there. Structuring your contracts properly. I'll reiterate, with tax credits will recover 27 to 44% of your R&D spending with these institutions. And then we can move on to what Vicky mentioned with MyTax again. That's a cost sharing to get access to just one particular person. As Jeff mentioned, you might hire that person when they graduate. Wonderful programs. The sweeteners are there to do it. We just need people to take initiative and take advantage of what's there. Thank you, Vicky or Cheryl.
Wow. So to summarize, basically an hour and 45 minutes worth of conversations, here's what I heard. Here's the key message that I heard was the call to action for the audience is contact you. Open the doors. Go find out what's going on. Establish ways to partner. Really be proactive and learn and understand that the partnerships are there. And that the willingness and the appetite is there to move this forward, that there's supports within the community to help move that forward. So we'll make sure that everybody gets your contact information, and I hope your phones are ringing off the hook as we close out. Thank you, panelists, for sharing your time, your ideas for academic industry collaborations. You've given us so much food for thought, such rich conversations, such great ideas for action. And we really do value and appreciate your partnership and your contributions to the community. To our webinar attendees, thank you for your attention. We all know that learning never stops, and opportunities to hear from leaders like this just are not to be missed. Well done making this a priority in your day. And to our friends and partners at Haltech and Innovation Factory, your partnership and support is so very much appreciated. And if there's anyone who's interested in seeing the Research Impact platform in action, please shoot me a quick email, and I'll make sure that I can get a demo set up for you, or a collective group if that works best for you. Thank you all for attending. Thank you very much for your time. Have a wonderful day. You've got a bit of time for a bio break before your next meeting. Happy first day of May. Hannah, do you have any parting words?
I think you summarized it beautifully. Like Cheryl said, we'll send out everything, including the recording, contact information, links, really anything that you may want from this session. So just expect that in your inbox, and hopefully you reach out to the panelists and get to meet them in person, see their spaces, and continue relationships.
I'm booking tours, everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.